Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House by Jonathan Allen and Amie Parnes. This is a book by Democrats for Democrats. It's flawed in a number of ways, but it's useful in order to understand the state of politics in the United States. I would argue the primary fault of this book is the inability of the writers to understand that just as with Hillary Clinton, President Trump was able to defeat a very flawed candidate. Hillary Clinton was corrupt, complicit in rape cover-ups for her husband, and very likely complicit in murder. She's on the record as asking, while Secretary of State, if you could just drone kill Edward Snowden, U.S. citizen. So Hillary Clinton is many things, but she is no dummy. That cannot be said about Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was a DEI vice presidential hire. She quit the presidential race when she was running the first time, after she was destroyed at a debate by Tulsi Gabbard. She quit before there was even a single primary vote cast for her. She was selected because Biden said, "I'm going to nominate a black woman," and she was the closest black woman to be nominated. She was not picked for her merit. She was ridiculed, just as Biden was ridiculed during the Obama years. The woman slept her way to the top. She has no signature policies, and she was picked because there was no real alternative after the debate performance with Trump. This book drives that home in a number of ways, but it never points out what anyone who has ever watched Kamala Harris for more than 5 minutes knows. The woman has no brain. She is just repeating whatever she is told. She doesn't have any thoughts of her own. And the writers, I think, as lifelong Democrats, seem unable to admit this. There's nowhere in this book in which it says, this person was an unworthy candidate and she should have never been put up. And they, despite writing hundreds of pages about this, instead we get other things, which I think are hilarious. Here's one. So this is Kamala reflecting on the debate performance of Biden, which was recognized by the entire world as a sign that Biden was not competent to be a presidential candidate at the bare minimum. But if you're not competent to be a candidate, it means you're not competent to be the president. What does that imply? Who's actually running the country? He'd had a bad night, she said, when she addressed the full crowd. But after 3.5 years at his side, she explained, she knew Biden was a profound thinker. Can you imagine someone saying Biden was a profound thinker? If that is the case, can a Democrat name one thing? Just go to any Democrat on the street and say, what is one thing in which you consider Biden to be a profound thinker? The fact that she would say such a thing just shows you that she doesn't know what she's talking about either. And I want to be clear, for any of you watching this channel for the first time, I haven't voted since 2012. I have no dog in this fight. I don't care about Trump. I don't care about Kamala. The gaslighting going on by Democrats to themselves is hilarious, even after a major loss like this. Obama did not want her. What can we do to recover from the debate? Obama asked. What is Joe's path forward? What if he can't bounce back? What do we do then? How do we win the election? All his questions pointed to a simple truth. Obama didn't think Biden could or should continue. Pelosi didn't have answers, but she knew they were running out of time to find them. The trajectory looked terminal. With Republicans primed to take control of the Senate, that meant winning the House was all the more important as a last line of defense against Trump. They did not, according to a person who heard their conversation, discuss replacements for Biden, but Obama already had determined that he didn't think Harris should take the president's spot on the ballot. That was his position from the outset, according to one person who spoke to him at the time. And if you saw Obama joking with Trump at the Jimmy Carter funeral, you can see that he was not at all heartbroken about her losing. And you could see from her look back at them and how comfortable they were together that she was upset about it. One colleague asked what would happen if Biden stepped aside. Many people, Pelosi said, would like to see an open process. Those people, she added, want to see our bench and all of the talent that we have. Finally, she said a mini primary would be time-consuming and Democrats would have to get on with it. What she hadn't said was Harris. There wasn't much room for interpretation. Pelosi didn't want Harris, didn't think the vice president would prevail in a competition for the nomination, and didn't think she would beat Trump. More than that, one Pelosi confidant said, "She doesn't like Harris." The shorthand version of her view became a phrase that would forever be attributed to her by insiders loyal to Biden and Harris. He goes, she goes. This is what was going on. Democrats were never going to tell you this, and they're telling it on background for this book, which reveals the reality. What everyone was thinking when they saw this turns out to be true and verified here by the Democrats. Here are what Biden aides had to say for people who were saying you need to step down, and their response was, even if Biden did drop out and you got your dreamed up open convention, you would only succeed in nominating the vice president. Is that what you want? You want her? Look at her polling. No one wants her. Forget it. It's never going to happen. And that was what was so interesting if you paid any attention to what was going on in America the summer before the election. Like Biden under Obama, Biden was widely ridiculed. For people with short memories, under the Obama presidency, Biden was a joke. Everyone thought of him as a joke. He made dumb comments all the time. The idea that he's a deep thinker is a joke. The same thing, everyone thought Kamala Harris was a joke. And despite the fact that they hyphenated the Biden-Harris administration, what were the Harris contributions to the administration other than her standing around in the room? So they had to call it that. But here you can see that their own aides, the people who were apparently on the same team in the Biden-Harris administration, had no confidence in this woman. So the reality, what my eyes saw, what my brain understood from what the words that were coming out of her mouth, what the Biden aides, what Obama saw, what Pelosi saw, everybody knew this. But instead, the media had to present her as the second coming, this wonderful thing. It's going to be so amazing. She's going to save us from tyranny and the end of democracy. And it turns out not to be true. And strangely enough, Americans actually rejected her. And everyone was surprised by this, including her. And this is revealed in the book. If you're enjoying this content so far, please consider hitting like or subscribe. It's an easy and simple way and free way that you can support this channel. So eventually, all this political pressure put on Biden forces him to step down. He realizes he's got no ally. Schumer abandons him. Pelosi abandons him. And yet, even then, he's so proud, he doesn't really want to endorse her. Biden wanted to make sure the framing of his withdrawal, of his historic decision to step aside, did not get lost in a Harris media frenzy. He was not ready to give up center stage. He deserved his due, he believed, and he told Harris that he would not include an endorsement in the statement announcing his exit. And of course, she had to campaign for that with him, and I think he finally did give something later that day. Had Biden been most concerned and clear-eyed about keeping Trump out of the White House, he might have chosen not to seek re-election at all. His approval ratings had dipped underwater for good following the fatal withdrawal from Afghanistan. He failed to sell his legislative wins as economic engines. About 3/4 of voters thought the country was on the wrong track, and most of them believed he was too old to serve another term. And the media propped up the lies that he was. Remember, there's a very famous, if you look at it on YouTube or other places, the sharp as a tack video, in which it was clear that this was a line being fed to the media and to staffers. And he kept saying, Biden is sharp as a tack, sharp as a tack. And what did we see in the debate? The entire world saw a man completely incompetent, out to lunch. And that didn't just happen that day. It had been happening the whole time. And it had been said that this was a right-wing conspiracy theory, that he was really sharp as a tack. And then the lies crumbled in front of them, and they thought, oh, I guess they were actually right. This isn't a conspiracy theory. He's been gone for months, potentially years. And so when you see this recrimination or this revisionism, oh, well, he should have stepped out, there were no voices for this. And these are, again, Democratic journalists writing for Democrats, and they don't seem to have any ability to take stock and say, we failed. We should have held this person accountable. We should have had primaries. Instead, we just let this guy run. And it is difficult to overcome an incumbent president, but they only have themselves to blame. They can't go back and blame Biden entirely. They went along with it. And remember, they said he was sharp as a tack. Ignoring the fact that if you're not fit to be a presidential candidate, you're not fit to be president. And yet, they so didn't want Kamala Harris that they didn't invoke the 25th Amendment. What about the argument for keeping her? in a sense, her inevitability, Harris held crucial advantages beyond their backing, a level of incumbency, a call sheet of delegates, and Democrats' fear of creating a backlash by skipping over a black woman. Because her name was already on the Biden-Harris campaign, there would be no legal complication in transferring the war chest, that's all the money they had raised, to her. That alone was enough to put a chill on potential rivals. And I'm not going to get into it too much, but the book notes Gretchen Whitmer and other people not really going for it. So there weren't really any other rivals. I think most people realized it was doomed to try to run against Trump with 100 days to go. You couldn't really get your message out there, and they were happy to let her fail. Biden's endorsement also meant that his campaign team felt obliged to swing in behind Harris, even though she was not yet the party's nominee. So what happens during the race? Of course, we have the famous attempted assassinations of President Trump, but she does get a little bit of a bump in the beginning because the media hyped her up. She's so amazing. After we've been calling her a dummy for years, we suddenly have decided that she's not a dummy because we have to defeat fascism. It was a rare blip of good news for Trump in the summer of Harris's ascent. A private Hart Research Associates survey taken for the Harris campaign from August the 26th through August the 28th showed her leading Trump by 2 percentage points across battleground states. Even if polls were off, there was no doubt that the race had moved in the Democrats' direction. But the survey contained red flags for Harris, perils that the Trump team could see more clearly. Voters were most likely to cite inflation and immigration as their top concerns. Those were also the issues on which Trump had the biggest edge. By a 54 to 37% spread, they preferred Trump on dealing with immigration and border security. Respondents also said he would be better at handling inflation by a 48 to 39% margin. More broadly, they picked him as best positioned to deal with the economy, 50% to 41%, and crime 47% to 42%, even though he had been convicted in New York, and the first bullet point in Harris's biography was her work as a prosecutor. So you can see here, the journalists aren't even willing to accept the facts. The facts say that they accept him on this, and she's a prosecutor and he's a convicted felon, but they still trust him more. What does that tell you? There's no willingness of the writers to step back and say, maybe that doesn't matter to the American people, or maybe they don't believe that these convictions mean anything, that they believe they were politically motivated, and that many other people in politics would have failed that. I'm not trying to vindicate the president as some kind of squeaky clean guy. Everybody knows that he's not really good at business, and he sort of squeaked through on bankruptcy laws. But the idea that these were genuine felony convictions that were not politically motivated, this is lost on these writers. The American people didn't really accept that. As you can see, they elected a convicted felon. When she's asked on The View, would you have done anything differently? And keep in mind, if she answers yes, then she now starts to differentiate herself from Biden. But if she says no, she is tying herself to Biden, which allows Trump and the team to completely beat her over the head and say, you were in the room, you said it was the Biden-Harris administration, but you didn't do any of these things that you said you're going to do now. Why should we believe you? These are all good arguments. That was hardly a clean break from Biden, but Harris started in that direction when The View co-host Sunny Hostin asked about any issues where the president and vice president disagreed. Harris was not ready for the follow-up, though. Reading from notes, Hostin pressed Harris on whether there was anything specifically she would have done differently than President Biden during the past 4 years. Harris paused for a beat. Remember, this is this brilliant woman who's going to wipe the floor with Trump. Her jaw tightened, and her eyes looked upwards, as though she were trying to access information. Shaking her head lightly from side to side, she spoke 9 words that would haunt her campaign. There is not a thing that comes to mind, she said, meaning there's not a thing that comes to mind that I would have done differently than President Biden. And one of her aides says, what the hell was that? That's not what we practiced. It proved the money shot for Trump's ad makers, said one Harris confidant, and it was her own bad moment. Yeah, own bad moment. As if that was the one bad moment that she had in the campaign. Any time that you'd watch her give an interview, it would just be word salad. And she'd start with, I'm a middle class, I come from a middle class background, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she wouldn't be able to answer the question because she has no brains. Harris was poised to become the first woman elected president and to put a permanent end to the Trump era. This embodiment of the American melting pot, a daughter of Jamaican and Indian parents, raised in a middle-class neighborhood and bused to an integrated school, stood near the mountaintop of history. Armed with the energy of the trail and the data of her campaign's number crunchers, she believed with every fiber of her being that she would ascend the summit. Notice there's no criticism of the writers here. This is the hagiography that built up to this. This is the hagiography that led Democrats and Harris to think she was actually going to win. And they're repeating it here. They don't say in here, this was a flawed woman who has no brains, who slept her way to the top, who was a DEI hire, and who was only there because they couldn't get anyone else to run in the final 100 days, and no one else would be able to access the money that was raised under her last name, the Biden-Harris name campaign. None of that's mentioned. All of this, embodiment of the American melting pot, raised in a middle-class neighborhood, stood near the mountaintop of history. So you can't stand near the mountaintop of history if you are not capable of ascending the mountaintop. And even the American people, as silly as we are on many things, managed to see that this woman was empty-headed, and they didn't elect her. They didn't elect someone with a whole lot of brains in her place. It's not like Trump is, a scholar of any kind. But compared to Harris, anybody looks like a scholar. And here the recrimination comes for Biden. These people, they want to blame everyone but themselves and say, you are the ones who allowed Biden to run unopposed. You are the ones who allowed Kamala to take over without a fight. And yeah, now they're trying to place all the blame on Biden. Listen to this. Before he met Trump on a debate stage in Atlanta in June 2024, Biden was on track to lose. They didn't say that at the time, but he continued to run anyway, even as the dominoes continued to fall, and one by one his fellow party leaders and donors turned against him. After the election, even as his closest aides said he had realized the die was cast and there was no way he could have defeated Donald Trump, he said the opposite. First, in private conversations with friends and close allies, he maintained he could have won. Then he said it out loud in an interview and to a gaggle of reporters at what would be his final face-to-face with the White House press corps. It was all a sad and stunning turn for Biden, who had so endeared himself to his party by defeating Trump in 2020. Back then, he had finally won the prize he had pursued for his entire adult life. He believed he had delivered policies that put him in a league with the nation's greatest presidents, even as voters told him the opposite. You want to talk about delusion. Now, as he prepared to leave the White House, he had lost almost everything: his presidency, his political career, his physical prowess, his acuity, and even some of his friends. What endured was the naked egotism that compelled him to seek a second term, continue to run when it was clear he would not win, and make wild claims that he would have beaten Trump again if only he had not dropped his bid. Oh. As a footnote to this, as I said, this is written by Democrats for Democrats. In multiple sections of the book, the writers refer to the sacking of the U.S. Capitol on January the 6th. I refer to January the 6th as boomers taking selfies. For anyone who is familiar with the term sack, as in the sack of Rome or the sack of Constantinople, this involves murder, rape, pillage, the burning of buildings. To use the term sack to refer to a bunch of boomers who were let into the Capitol by the Capitol Police is crazy. But the problem is the writers are writing for a friendly audience who just buys into this. But the reality is anyone who refers to January the 6th as a coup or an insurrection, or in this crazy case, a sacking, has no concept of what a coup is, has no concept of what a sacking is, doesn't know history, or even how the U.S. is run, or how the U.S. government works. Let's pretend for a second that the people took over the building and they occupied it for 2 years. This doesn't mean that they've taken over the country. That's not how it works. It's not like some video game. We took over the Capitol and now we've overthrown the country. Congress can go meet in a different building. There's no law that says you have to meet in this building in order to pass laws. Congress can meet elsewhere and pass laws elsewhere. They're not required to be inside that building. So the idea that taking over the building was a coup and an insurrection is just detached. These are people who not only are detached from reality, they don't understand how the U.S. government works. To call January the 6th as an insurrection, as a coup, as a sacking. People who use coup or insurrection To refer to January the 6th cannot be taken seriously in conversation, at least not about this subject. The same thing is true about voting irregularities. Voting irregularities, again referred to very casually in this book. They said Biden beat him, barely, but he beat him. But the point is, it's now common knowledge. Go look at it on Wikipedia, go look at it on the internet. Mayor Daley in Chicago cheated to get President Kennedy across the line in Illinois. He had a bunch of dead people vote for President Kennedy. Richard Nixon didn't dispute it. He knew, and now it's public knowledge. The same thing, there were voting irregularities during the 2000 election of President Bush. So, but we're supposed to pretend, even though there was voting fraud in 1960, voting irregularities in 2000, but in 2020, during COVID, a man widely mocked during Obama's presidency not only got more votes than Obama, one of the most historic elections ever, with the election of the 2008 election of Obama, but he got more votes than any president in history. I'm supposed to believe that? It's again the media asking me, don't believe your eyes, don't believe your brain, believe us, the media, because we would never lie to you. The real story that these people can't report is that Trump is the first president since FDR to win 3 straight elections. He won in 2016, he won in 2020, he won in 2024. But just as Nixon didn't really dispute with Kennedy, he just let it go, and Nixon went on to win on his own again. Same thing, Trump didn't really go for it. He did incite these people, but remember, Trump doesn't think things true. I think he did incite these people, but to say that these people then conducted an insurrection or a coup is crazy. They're just a bunch of boomers. They took selfies. They politely walked through the hall that the Capitol Police had let them into, and to say that this is a coup is silly. The media think that if they repeat things enough, Russia, 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 or there's no such thing as voter fraud, or January the 6th was an insurrection, if they keep saying it, you will believe it. But the truth is, we would have to disbelieve our own eyes, we would have to disbelieve our own brains in order to accept such nonsense. And finally, I've done a review on a book on President Trump, one of the Woodward books, and I'll put a link to that in the description as well as a card. But just as a footnote here, this review has not been about Trump, but I just want to note this as we're wrapping up. He's now more knowledgeable about what it takes to be president after his first term, Susie Wiles told NBC News in a February interview. He's more knowledgeable about how to interact with the media. His personnel instincts are, I think, better honed. The new skills are inside the package of the same Donald Trump. That didn't age very well. At the time of this recording, Trump is firing another national security advisor. He's getting rid of Mike Waltz, just like he got rid of Mike Flynn, because he is a bad judge of character. Trump believes the last person who talks to him who has any kind of conviction and sounds smart. That's how Trump hires people. Do you tell me that I'm wonderful? Do you tell me that I'm great? Do you sound smart? Then I'll hire you. And if at some point you do something I don't like, I'll fire you. Obviously, Waltz deserves to be fired with the whole Signalgate controversy. If you don't know about that, go look it up. There's plenty of people who've done work on it. So Waltz should be gone, and he's a warmonger. I don't want to have anything to do with him. But the point is, it just shows you Trump hasn't learned anything. He's the same guy in 2016, so this was a lie that the Republicans were telling themselves about Trump. He's better now. He's learned all his mistakes. He's making the same mistakes. He's potentially more incompetent now, because one could concede in 2016 when he became president, he didn't know how the whole thing worked, and okay, one could give him some grace and say, well, you're an idiot, but I can see that the presidency is overwhelming. But not only did he have those 4 years, he's had 4 years to ponder what he did wrong in those first 4 years, and he's still making the same mistakes again. He is a photo op president. He doesn't think deeply about anything. He has no deep moral convictions, which is why he can flip-flop on things all day long. We're going to have tariffs, and then we're not going to have tariffs. The man is not serious. And anyone who thinks, oh, it's so much better than Kamala, I don't know. I really don't know. In a sense, I don't care. America has been in trouble for a very long time. It will continue to be in trouble, in part because the American people are not serious people. So we don't take ourselves seriously, so why should the government be taken seriously? Why would we get great leaders if we're not great people? These are questions that no one wants to ask. We feel very entitled. We feel we should be entitled to great and virtuous leaders. But why would we have great and virtuous leaders if we don't seek virtue, if we don't seek greatness ourselves, when all we're seeking is money? All we're seeking is the Kardashians. All we're seeking is Uber Eats because we're too lazy to go out and get our McDonald's. There's a lot of problems in America. I think this book does a good job of underlining some of them, not only in this election, but underlining the blind spots of the authors themselves, who seem incapable of seeing the consequences of lying, which they have been complicit in numerous ways. If you'd like to support this channel, consider hitting like, subscribe. It's a free way you can support us. Share this content with other people who you think would enjoy it. You could also, if you want to, buy a copy of the book. Could I recommend it? I think generally, as I say, if you want to understand the state of what's going on in America, I think it's a useful book to read. So if you want to support the channel, you can buy a copy using a link in the description. If you want to thank me for this presentation, there's Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal below. There are links. If you want to support me on an ongoing basis, there's links to Patreon and YouTube membership. You'll get early access to reviews like this one, as well as get access to members-only videos where I go a bit behind the scenes, talk about what I'm reviewing, and talk about my thought process. There's also my Amazon wish list at the very, very bottom of the description, in which you can nominate a book, go through. You'll see some books about Palestine. That's for my Palestine bookshelf channel. But if you see other books that are not Palestine related, they're for this channel. And buy it, send it my way. I'll do my best to review it in a timely manner. And that's a way that you can put forward a book that you're interested in for me to review. Until next time, enjoy your reading.